He studies the bruise beyond his galaxy and tastes a sea of hate older than empires. Prophecy hisses that a greater storm waits, a well where fear and faith burn bright enough to be forged into a throne. He decides now, cross the veil, claim the war of that other cosmos, and rule it. He draws a force storm, thin as a wire, and threads it through a coordinate he has named in secret, the place where hyperspace buckles against the warp. Pressure builds, the storm screams, the breach opens, and Darth Sidious falls through into a sky already on fire. A shrine world called Kallista Prime orbits a weak sun, wrapped in cathedral hives and an ancient orbital ring. Sirens peep, vox choirs wail prayers into open channels, cyclonic torpedo warnings blink scarlet. In the command bastion, pick screens stutter between macro battery plots and crowded casualty panes. The storm vomits a black star above the capital spire. It is a needle of lightning that unthreads itself into a shape like a man in a beaten black robe. Lightning uncoils around his hands. Heat folds the clouds. A crippled troopship, burning nose first, breaks atmosphere over the city. He looks down, tastes the panic, and moves. His hands rise. Thought tightens. The falling ship lurches. Plates scream as if their bolts remember fear. He tilts it off axis, rolls its dying belly toward the ocean, and shaves its trajectory beside the spire. It scuds across the water in a boiling scar and goes under. A pressure wave shatters stained glass for kilometers. Millions live who would have died. In the bastion, a junior augur tech gasps and makes the sign of the Aquila. "Saints preserve us," she whispers. The Lord Admiral does not whisper. "Track that apparition," barks Admiral Lyra Galen of Battlefleet Kallista, hair cropped like steel wire. "All batteries hold, no fire without my mark." On the sanctum floor, the man in black steps onto the spire balcony. Brass bells swing crazed arcs. Wind rips incense in wet ropes. Pilgrims crawl, sobbing, toward the altar. He lifts one palm. Lightning jumps. It does not strike. It crawls into the void shields overhead and pours their fields back to full. The city shields steady. Macro cannons on the ring stop flickering and lock target arcs. The Vox blooms with new clarity. Somewhere deep, a calm voice threads into every naval crewman's mind. Orders arrive before fear can form. Batteries correct by 2 degrees. Missiles ripple out in a clean fan. Enemy torpedoes die in disciplined blossoms far above the atmosphere. Duty feels easier. Angles feel obvious. He is shaping them. Battle meditation transposed onto minds tuned for war. Cost follows. He tastes it. The warp notices back. A bruise opens in the sky. Warp lights boil into screaming masks. A warband rides the wound black and gold armor with the stink of old oaths. Trailing them, sorcerous blue fire, glyphs unraveling in the wind. 1,000 suns host. Their leader speaks from a horned prow, voice too wide for the air. "Stranger," says Thravion the archivist, "you shine like a stolen sun. Give me your true name." "Sidious." "Who was once Sheev Palpatine, who has been Emperor," smiles. "No." He extends his hands. Lightning blooms in a fan. He does not aim to kill ships. He strikes the void between them, opens a pressure crater, and the leading squadron tumbles into each other, colliding in a flower of wreckage and men. He turns wrist, and the ring's lances fire on an unheard count, stitching neat lines through plasma wakes. Controlled collateral, as if he has practiced this dance forever. On the spire, doors slam. A woman in black carapace with a rosette at her collar steps out, flanked by grim soldiers and a single hooded figure whose very presence feels wrong. "By my authority," she says, voice amplified by cherub drones. "I, Inquisitor Acastia Vorn of the Ordo Hereticus, claim command of this incident." Sidious bows his head the width of a knife. "I am an ally in your hour of need. Your soul is not on any register," says the Inquisitor. "And your power sings of things we burn." Her eyes never leave him. He feels her will like a blade. Admiral Galen arrives on a storm of boots and brass. She salutes the rosette, then turns to the robed stranger. "Whoever you are, you just kept my city from becoming glass. Give me 3 more minutes of that and you can be a choir boy for all I care." Acastia's gaze hardens. "You will regret those words if I hang for them." "Then hang me later," says Galen. "Shoot now." He lifts his palm again. The battle thickens. The first wave breaks. The orbital rings, macro batteries, fire like a heartbeat. The Chaos Fleet bleeds and staggers. Sidious walks along the balcony edge as if he owns wind and gravity. He lets the fear of the planet pour through him. It is sweet. It is fuel. He turns it into orders on invisible wire and feeds it back into crews and guns that are very good at obeying. On the ground, cult cells run screaming toward an ecclesiarchy mustering hall, knives out, banners of flayed scripture held high. He flicks 2 fingers. An unseen shove scatters them like leaves. He does not dirty his robe. Others do. Sisters of battle crash into the cultists in holy fury. Bolts roar. The sisters do not watch him. They watch their saints. The saints pretend not to look at him. In the bastion, a war room forms around a hololith of the city and the orbit. Galen's staff snap to it. Cogitators chatter. "He's sinking our cadence," a gunnery master murmurs. "I don't know how." She knows she doesn't care. Acastia knows she cares. She studies the stranger's hands, the scar lines around his eyes that look like old lightning happened to him long ago. "Your aid comes with a debt," she says. "My aid is proof," Sidious replies, voice low. "I stop death. You count lives." "What do you want?" asks Galen, cutting to cost. "A seat at your table," he says. Lightning brushes the shields again and they sing like glass. "And the right to be heard." Before an answer can land, the augur shrieks. The bruise in the sky darkens. New vectors appear. Not brash warships now. A shape like a book written in teeth slides out of unreality. Sigils run backward across its hull. The air tastes of copper thinking of itself. Thravian laughs from his prow. "Let the ledger open," he intones. A shadow climbs the spire wall like a cold thought. The hooded figure by Acastia steps forward without command. The hood falls, skin like wax, eyes like dry wells. The Culexus assassin named Quietus turns his face towards Sidious and, unbeing, washes over the balcony. The force dies in a circle around the assassin, as if someone blew out a candle. Sidious feels it drop from his hands. His battle meditation coughs. The crews he was holding steady waver. Weapon arcs drift. A lance misses. A torpedo runs long. Sidious's smile thins. He steps sideways, drawing distance. "Interesting," he murmurs. "You will not speak," Acastia says to him, voice tight. "While he is near, you will not think the way you like to think." Thravian's ship opens a maw on its spine. Sound drops. A whisper unspools into every mind, even the ones that have never learned to read. It is a name riddle that wants to replace all other name, a mimetic hex. "Say it," says the warp. "Say it and be it." Sidious feels it curl around him, fishing for the word that is him. He is a thing of names, Chancellor, Emperor, Darth. He lets the whisper go past as if he is a ruin and the wind does not know where to catch. He answers with a cleaner trick. He hooks the whisper itself and ties it to Thravian's banners. Voxnets translate the riddle into the Chaos Fleet's IFF tags. Their own guns start to think their masters are enemies. For a minute they are. That minute saves a hive. The ledger ship speaks again. Symbols peel off its hull like flakes and stick to the spire. The stone groans. Pilgrims retch black water. A sister drops her weapon and sags, whispering apologies to a saint whose name just started to feel wrong. "It wants your shape," Acastia says, eyes on Sidious. "And something else wants to take it away." Quietus steps closer. The hole around him eats the storm. Sidious's lightning coughs and then refuses to form. He reaches instead for motion. hands, feet. The old truth, if he cannot be a god, he will be a knife. Quietus moves with no drama. The null bends air. Sidious arcs a low sweep. Quietus is not there. The assassin appears inside Sidious's guard with a weapon that is not iron and not faith. Blackstone edge. It is a shard of a prison cut into a blade. It does not hum. It denies. It kisses Sidious' forearm. Pain, pure and clean, runs up to his shoulder. He staggers. The force, close as breath all his life, is gone in that one step around Quietus. He steps again, away, breaks line, reaches for a higher lever. Not lightning mind. He shoves at a dozen gunners instead, outside the null. They feel a simple need, discipline. They fire on a timing his hands beat on the balcony rail. The ledger ship's maw closes. Its calculated chant falters. Macro shells punch through its lies, and truth floods into them. The truth of mass and speed and shaped charge. The thing dies confused, and then simply dies. Thravian screams a counter word. A blue fire avatar walks down into the city on legs of air. It is a lord of change, tall as a tower, feathers made of script that writes and unwrites what it is. Name yourself, it croons as it reaches. Emperor, he says softly, for himself. He knows it is a lie here, and also not a lie. He hurls what lightning remains around the null like a net. The demon laughs because lightning is dear to it. It catches it, eats it, and spits it back such that every bolt carries a question. Each question shaves slivers off his certainty. Why do you rule? Because I can. Why do you deserve? Because I do. Why is that enough? Because it must be. One answer stumbles. That is where the demon digs its talon. The city does not know his doubt. The city knows the choir. In the next instant, 1,000 lay throats in 1,000 chapels sing one simple note. The warp in the air wrinkles the way a pond does when a stone skips across. The note is the name that doesn't change. The master of mankind. For a heartbeat, the lord of change staggers. It is not kill, it is reminded. Space remembers what it is. A saint's icon flares on a banner and the paint cracks like ice. The demon pulls its hand back as if burned and reconsiders hunger. Sidious bleeds inside his robe where the Blackstone kissed him. The wound will not close with will, the way all his other wounds have always obeyed. He bares teeth and sets his feet. Enough, he says, and his voice is the old voice that told a galaxy what it would do. He looks at Galen. Admiral, he says, volley fire on my mark. All lances, there. He points at the angle between a crippled troopship and the demon's projection locus eyes, if a man can point at a piece of mathematics. Galen believes because the alternative is to believe blue fire. All ships, she snaps. On the stranger's mark, he counts in his head. At 4, he shouts, mark! The lances reach the angle he drew with his mouth. The air tears. A ripple shard goes through the demon's ankle and up its thigh. It hops, ugly and off balance, as the projection loses a leg. The city breathes again. The first wave fails. The second wave, the one that knows how to ask questions, withdraws smiling. War council in the bastion smells like hot ink, gun oil, and fresh blood on bandages. Cogitators whisper. Servo skulls drift like dumb birds. Admiral Galen stands under a hololith that spills slow rain on her shoulders. Inquisitor Acastia Vorn stands opposite, blank eyes gone sharp with rage and something colder. Praise where it is due, the Admiral says. You made my ring better than it is. Name your craft. I am a sovereign of another galaxy, says Sidious. He keeps his tone simple. His robe hides the trembling in his fingers where the Blackstone touched. I command minds and storms. I can make your war clean. Acastia's laugh is short. We don't do we do victory, Galen says, and survival. This man gives both. What is your price? She is not a fool. She is a calculator with a heart, and the heart belongs to the city her family has guarded for 6 generations. Power assigned by competence, Sidious says. authority where I prove worth, a seat beside you in the places where decisions bleed. I will save 10 worlds for everyone you let me order. And when you are finished saving, Acastia asks, do we get to keep our souls? He looks at her. Your souls belong to your god already. I am not interested in petty theft. We will never sanction sorcery, she says, not even when it rescues us, especially then. You already did, he says, and flicks his eyes toward the choir microphones bolted into the bastion walls. You sang your god into the air until the air remembered itself. That is prayer, says Acastia, jaw tight. That is the same war, he says softly, just different words. The debate slows, sharpens, mercy or survival, doctrine or outcomes. Acastia steelmans him without intending to. I do not dispute that you rescued millions, she says. I dispute that you will stop when rescue becomes the excuse for a crown. Galen steelmans her without brag. If he sits in our councils, we bind him with law. If we push him out, he'll save us anyway, and the people will bind themselves to him. Choose the chain you like. An alarm cuts them, not the scream of incoming. A thinner chime, old and dangerous. A ward adept turns, face gone gray. New intrusion, he whispers. Not warp, not void. A hole that is not a hole is walking up our main stair. Acastia's eyes cut to Quietus. The assassin tilts his head as if listening to nothing. Cold, he says in a voice like paper. Like the places gods do not go. The doors open. A procession of metal skeletons with green fire in their chests files in as if the bastion belongs to them. Their leader wears a spine of Blackstone that drinks the light. Necrons, a cryptek, Sutekh, the Cipher. He speaks in chimes. Old thief, he says to Sidious. Just, we knew the day you touched our prison. We have come to put you back. Back where? Admiral Galen breathed. In the box that keeps wrong ideas out of your sky. Sutekh chimes and lifts a rod that bends geometry. The null radiates. Quietus' aura and the Blackstone's hunger overlap, and for a moment the room feels like it is falling into a dry well. Sidious swayed. The blade kiss on his arm wakes and bites. He stands anyway. You will be first, he says to the cryptek, voice gone thin and bright. In my new ledger, you have no ledger in this place, Sutekh says. You have a wound. He moves. The Necron weapon traces a line that wants to be true. Sidious twists the way old dancers twist. Small steps, perfect angles. The force, strangled near Quietus and drunk by Blackstone, answers only like flexed muscle and rage. It is enough to not die. He draws the simplest thing a man can draw. A small knife. It is stupid against necrodermis. He does not intend to kill with it. He intends to measure. He finds the place where the rod's field peaks. He lets it graze his blade. The knife sings and burns out of his hand. He now knows the field's timing. He baits the cryptek into striking again. He leans a half hair too far. The rod brackets his shoulder. Pain again. He gasps, and for a second, the emperor of another galaxy is just a hurting old man. Then he steps through the pain into timing. The rod falls. He steps inside and hammers his palm into Sutekh's chest jewel. He cannot break it. He can push. He pushes the cryptek 3 centimeters into the floor. It is enough to disrupt the geometry for a single breath. Galen is not slow. All hands fire on my mark, she says again, but this time to the grenadiers in the hall. Frag, crack, melta. The bastion becomes thunder. The first Necron rank goes down. They rise again, slow and lawful. That law is a weapon, but law can be broken by pulse. The Melta team puts a hole in Sutekh's side, and the cryptek's field wobbles. Acastia has decisions left. She makes them fast. Quietus, she says. Cut this man's aura out of that fight. She gestures at Sidious with her chin permission to breathe. The assassin moves away, drawing the null with him. For a moment the force returns like a limb you thought lost. Sidious drinks it with no ceremony. He does not roar. He does not glow. He goes very still. He levers the melter stutter and the rod timing and his own hate into a push that is not lightning. The push is plain, mass and vector with contempt braided through. It drives Sutekh through his own rank. A wall takes the cryptech like a receiver. He crumples with the indifference of something that will stand back up later. Not now. The Necrons recalibrate to the concept of this room and step backward into cold light. They are patient. They will return with more Blackstone. That is the promise in their chimes. Silence falls like dust. The wound in his arm drips. He hides it with a fold of cloth. He does not hide the way he staggers and then stands straight. The room watches and memorizes two things. He bleeds, he does not stop. A ward light floats down out of nowhere and lands on the hololith. No one touched it. The Astronomicon, leagues and miracles away, brightens in the skulls of men who have felt it all their lives. A single word drops into the room without sound. Terror. The throne calls, Acastia says. She does not ask if he hears it too. They ride the void on a battle cruiser older than the city it saved. Gellar fields hum like a lullaby with the ship's chapel is full. The ship's medicae is fuller. Sidious sits in a medicae tank because the Sisters of Battle who dragged him there did not ask politely. They ordered him, and he obeyed because he wanted to learn the limits of that order. The wound on his arm resists Bacta and prayers with equal disdain. A Sister of Silence stands watch. The Knight Centura does not speak. She does not need to. Her presence makes the medicae instruments tick wrong. Her gaze says boundary. He reads it and files it under a new word he has learned to respect. Blank. A chaplain comes. A confessor with scars like scripture and eyes like lit coals. He is Canonis Preceptor Isolde Wren, traveling with the sisters to sit with men who have to face terror and with strangers who think they want to. He sits on a crate. He does not cross himself. You saved my sisters, he says. You saved tens of thousands of my flock. Thank you. Sidious inclines his head. You also made all of that saving about you, Isolde continues, voice mild as rain. I can smell the self in it at 30 paces. Self builds empires, Sidious says. Self rots them, Isolde says gently. Faith builds, duty maintains, love redeems, though we rarely deserve it. Where in you will any of those live? In victory, Sidious says, and means it. The chaplain nods as if that is an honest answer, which it is. Dogma is a fence, he says. When wolves come, fences look timid, but without them, you breed wolves. He studies the black vein creeping from Sidious's wound. Cost, he says. Remember it, he remembers. In the warp, someone else does too. Mid-transit, the ship shudders. Not with guns, with idea. The Gellar field grain goes rough. Hymnals wilt. The air smells briefly of wet fur and hot copper, the way it did when he killed his master and was reborn. He sees himself standing at the end of the medicae bay. Not a mirror, a future the warp would like. The figure wears a crown of wires and bone. The Imperial Aquila spreads out behind like a starving bird, and at its heart a black cog with 8 spokes turns. His face is younger. His eyes are old. He smiles a kindly smile. Let me optimize you, says the other Sidious. His voice is smooth pain. Do what you always wanted without the friction of their small gods. Fuse their law to your will. Make order the same as obedience. You hate waste? I have a way to erase it. No more doubt. No more price you cannot pay. The Knight Centura slides one step, placing herself between them. Her aura shears the air. The mirror flinches. Sidious stands, water raining off him. He does not touch lightning. He rests his wet hand on the medicae glass and watches the other hand do the same. I do not share thrones, he says, soft. You are me, the mirror says patiently. I am not a share. Then you are a rival, he says, and smiles like a knife. The clash is fast. The mirror moves like a perfect echo, but a half-beat early. An advantage you can only have if you know yourself and forget surprise. Sidious yields the first beat, takes the second, and on the third he cheats by becoming small. He lets old fear slide up and covers it with contempt. The mirror grabs the fear and tries to shape it into law, and finds only smoke. The Knight Centura's aura eats the edge the mirror kept like a pet. A bell rings inside the ship, not a material bell. The Astronomicon far away flares through the choir. For a heartbeat, the warp looks toward Terra. The mirror loses attention like a predator, distracted by a larger shape. The thing he would be snarls like a betrayed son and retreats, not defeated, only delayed. Reach the throne, Isolde says, breathless. The choice must be made where choices live. Terra rises like a legend up through world haze and lit ocean. The ship dies in the shadow of the palace. They disembark under vaults built for gods. Golden-armored giants watch them with soft eyes that can kill Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's nearest and farthest sons. Servitors swing incense censers like moons. Choirs stand beneath brass pipes wider than ships. The air is thick with oil, prayer, and old light. Acastia Vorn walks beside Sidious with Quietus at her heel. Admiral Galen walks on his other side, face up, mouth slightly open like a child seeing the inside of a dream she trained her whole life to deserve. The Knight Centura moves like a shadow in bright noon. Canoness Isolde steps out in front and the Custodes do not stop her, which says more than speech. They reach a door so simple it is obscene in this dungeon of beauty. Two custodians open it with their hands. Inside a chamber. Inside that chamber, history. Machines that are more cathedral than machine. Cables like trees. A throne that is also a tomb. A man that is a fire. They stand. No voice speaks. Thought does. It is not words, it is knowing. It is the sun coming up, and you remember that it has always done so, even on the days you did not look. He has had masters. He has been a master. He has never felt something that did not need to be called either one. The presence on the throne does not lord, it simply is. And in its being, it demands reverence, the way a mountain demands respect, by existing and letting the wind do the rest. The exchange is quick and longer than a life. He shows the Emperor the breach he made, the storm threaded through a coordinate that should not exist. He shows the cost, the cut that would not close, the way his power calls other powers like flies. He shows the ledger he wants to write, 10 worlds saved for one command given. He shows a future where chaos bleeds out, not because men become saints, but because obedience becomes efficient. The Emperor shows him 3 paths in a vision that is not a dream and not a lie. First, return. Walk back through his breach. Let the warp close behind like a healed scar. Memory fades like smoke. Lessons evaporate. He will return to his galaxy older and feel a hole in the place where something else had fit. He will try to fill it with the same hunger and it will taste stale. Peace of a cruel sort. Second, free agent, stay. Work as he wishes. Save worlds as he chooses and break others in passing. Gather a following of governors and admirals who like victory without sermons. The Imperium fractures along a line that already exists, and now has a symbol to rally around, the Black Emperor, who is not a saint. Civil war, politely named schism. Billions burn for the privilege of calling a solution clean. Third, Sanctioned Servant, stay under oath, bound and watched. Walk with blanks at both shoulders. Wear a torc of Blackstone at his throat that hums when he considers lying. Take writs signed by rosettes and eagles. Command fleets, save hives, bleed. Submit his storms to liturgy. Maximum impact, minimum freedom. The fence will hold. He will hate it. He will love the results. Deliberation is not long because he has always been quick. Deliberation is long because for the first time, he checks the math of his want against something heavier than want. He looks at Admiral Galen's hands, the callus where a family blade taught her grip. He looks at Acastia's steel and the blank's emptiness. He looks at the Knight Centura's patience and Canoness Isolde's eyes, which say mercy that hurts. He kneels. It is not a trick. It is a calculus. There will be time for tricks later. He sets his forehead to the cold stone that a million knees have polished. I will be your servant, he says, and means the word so that it tastes like ash and wine at once. Bind me, let me work, let me win, hold me to cost. The throne does not nod, it does not bless. A custodian steps forward with a torc like a piece of night. He holds it as if it might bite. It does. When they place it on Sidious's neck, the Blackstone hums. The wound in his arm tingles. The torc speaks without words. Rule yourself. Boundaries are spoken aloud, so they cut both ways. He will not compel imperial minds to worship him or any other. He will not forge warp storms over holy. He will not bargain. He will not conceal wounds of soul. He will keep a blank within 10 paces when he works in sanctuaries. He will present himself to the Inquisition every 100 days and answer questions without deceiving in spirit, not just letter. He will accept censure when he fails. He will receive power in exchange, fleets where he can prove he will not spend men like shot, writs where he must break sieges others cannot touch. Admiral Galen lifts a small box. Inside, a signet, the double-headed aquila fused with a red cog wheel. On the cog, a sigil no scholar on Terra can name. It is not demonic. It is not holy. It is an emblem of order sharpened into a knife. He presses it into his palm. Lord Protector, she says, because someone must give him a title, and that one is old and ambiguous. Segmentum Pacificus will be your proving ground, Inquisitor. Acastia's expression could break glass. She sets her seal next to his signet. You answer to me and to those I answer to, she says. I will watch you. I will kill you if you tilt wrong. Do not make me an executioner if you can make me an auditor. He bows lower than he has bowed to anyone living. Yes, he says, and hears the torc hum when the yes is dirtied by joy. He corrects the shape inside himself and says it again without the taste of crowns. Yes, the transformation is not thunder, it is a tightening. His lightning, when it next comes, will thread through law. His battle meditation will pull prayer in with the firings. His robe, when he stands, shows a new embroidery on the inner hem. A tiny aquila over a smaller, sharper room. They name his first crusade the Mandate of Quiet Storms. He sails with 3 battle groups and 5 regiments, whose officers take oaths with one hand and touch their knives with the other. A blank sits in his command sanctum, pale and patient, reading nothing and meaning everything. He touches the torc when he thinks of shortcuts. The torc hums. He chooses the long knife instead. On Bellatum Secundus, he lifts a hive's fallen spire with 1,000,000 workers, still inside by delegating the miracle. He makes 1,000 crane crews move like one mind. He feels the torc warm. The idea of reaching into their heads directly would be faster. He does not. The spire rises 3 meters and no further. He orders braces built and time bought with blood measured, not poured. He sleeps badly and wakes colder. This is what service feels like. Constriction and victory. On Vesper Reach, a Black Legion siege ram hammers a pilgrim city. He moves the weather, not a storm, a pressure ridge. It takes 3 days and costs a dozen ships' worth of fuel to maintain. The ram bites stone and then skids on surprise rain that should not exist. It embeds and becomes a monument to bad planning. He writes a commendation for a sergeant who died making that rain seem like God. He does not sign his own name on it. He signs the Admiral. On a nameless moon where Eldar raid like cats, he offers parley and means it. They laugh like silver knives. He watches the way their seer flinches at the blank. He suggests a new target for the Eldar, a Necron pylon farm aimed at the Astronomican's light. He does not lie. He simply provides true information to a species that loves elegant solutions. They cut the farm down because they hate it, not because he asked. He watches and learns how to move enemies without touching them. The torc hums loudest when he sits alone and thinks about the path called free agent. He would have liked the clean lines of that war. He would have liked the crown. He finds now that he likes something else more. Results that last. Word spreads. Everywhere. Reaction. In the underhalls of the Eye of Terror, Thravian kneels in front of something that is not a throne and swears that he will learn the stranger's name so he can break it. Behind him, a Lord of Change writes "servant" on the wall with a feather and laughs because it knows the shape of that word is different here. In a tomb that is not asleep, Sutekh the Cipher rebuilds his chest jewel and files a new theorem under predators on the boundary layer. He forges a blade longer than before and writes Sidious's breath pattern into it so it will cut easier. On Mars, tech priests argue about the storm that was a thread. A mago says the thread was a forbidden waveform. A junior says it was elegant. The junior is quiet the next day, transferred to a post teaching purity to Servo Skull. On Macrage, an ultramarine's chaplain reads fragments of reports and wonders if law can use a criminal like a tool without learning his grip. He pens a sermon about fences and wolves and ends it with no answer. That honesty makes it holy. On a craft world that drifts like regret, a farseer picks up a bone dice and sees a human who is a mirror, facing another human who is a fire. She smiles sadly. She tells her kin to avoid Segmentum Pacificus for a time, and for once they listen. In the palace on the throne, the Emperor is a sun that does not need to move to light. He knows that his new servant is a hinge. He knows that hinges rust. He does not think in metaphors. He thinks in duty. He allows the hinge to turn. The last image is a world seen from low orbit. The Aquila shines on a banner over a repaired spire. Around it, a red cog catches the light like a thin sunrise. On the cog, a small, sharp rune catechism. People below do not know what it is. They know their dead are fewer this month. They know their rations came on time. They sing the same hymn they sang before, and if some of them add a new line about storms that obey, the choir does not correct them. Darth Sidious stands at the edge of a command and watches 1,000 lights blink the way minds do when they are ready to be used. He lifts one hand. He does not close it into a fist. He opens. The torc hums. The blank breathes. The Admiral watches. The Inquisitor writes. "Begin," he says, and in a galaxy of hard choices, the hinge turns. The campaign map blooms across the hololith like a night sky being taught to obey. Dots wink green, red, and a hard white that mean unknown. Admiral Galen's finger traces a string of white downspin from Kallista Prime. "Null pylon signatures," she says. "Not ours. Spaced like prayer beads." Acastia looks at the printouts that servitors disgorged like penitents with offerings. "Necron geometry," she says. "Blackstone lattice. It drinks the Astronomicon when it grows large. If it reaches this length, our choir will stutter in 3 sectors." The Knight Kentura stands behind Sidious. She is a wall of silence and a blade in one shape. The torc at Sidious's throat hums a soft, warning note. He reads the lattice with the predator's calm. "It is also a net," he says, "laid in the same seam I used to enter. They mean to close the door or own it." Galen's jaw works once. "Options," she says. "Break the nodes," Acastia answers. "Purify with melter and prayer. Slow them. That is mercy. Seize and bend them," Sidious says. "Turn their null into a gate anchor. Marry it to your Gellar grain. Stitch a counter beacon that steadies your minds and spoils their sorcery." Acastia's eyes cut to the torc. It hums again. "What cost?" she asks. "Noise," he says. "The warp hears any new song. The Necrons hear any hand on their work. Chaos comes because it always does. They come because they hate anything that isn't an empty rule." Galen nods. "Sanctioned," she says. "With condition." She looks to the rosette. Acastia lifts her chin. "Blank escort within 3 paces when you touch a node. No storm over holy ground. No whispers in mines without consent. You will use your mouth for orders, Lord Protector. and we will use our ears. Agreed, he says. The torc warms in approval when the agreement carries no crown hidden under it. They make for the sable belt, a dust sea around a dwarf star whose light is thin and honest. The null pylon floats there, clamped to a dead moon like a black thorn in gray meat. It hums at a note that makes teeth. A Necron tube dozes above it as a locked door. Galen's cruisers slide in on silent drives. Lances go dark. Torpedoes. On the command deck, Sidious stands with the blank Quietus to his right and the Knight Centura to his left. Between them, a space where lightning would die if it tried to. Boarding teams ready, reports a mate with a scar shaped like a promise across his. Kasserkin and Celestians in the first wave. Second wave holds for breach. Remember your fence, Canoness Isolde says over the vox. Purity is not timidity. Acastia watches Sidious. You don't lead the first, she says. You steer it. He nods. The torc hums. He opens his hand, and the ship's mind opens to him in ways allowed, not as a slave, but as a partner. He does not pull on crew souls. He taps into the cadence he learned in Kallista's storm and sets timing with plain words. On 3, he says into the vox. 1, 2, 3. Torpedoes do not roar. They step into the dark and walk until they arrive. A green flare blows a hole in Necron hull. Melta cuts a tooth out of the Blackstone on the moon. Vox fills with short prayers and shorter curses. Boarding claws bite. The first wave goes in. Sidious feels where he would have used lightning and does not. He nudges gunners with rank alone. He reminds a squad leader of a drill they bled for a year ago. He says a name at the right time to stop a man from freezing. Only a name. No hook in it. The torc warms. It approves of leash and the hand that accepts it. The Necron ship wakes. Green light walks veins in its walls. Warriors unfold like knives, remembering they were knives. Sutekh the Cipher greets the Kasserkin with a rod that bends the corridor around itself. He has a new blade strapped along his back. It is longer than before and tuned to a breath, not human and not machine. Old thief, he chimes, though Sidious is not there in flesh. Come take your due, soon, Sidious says into the board net and sends Quietus to the point of contact like a scalpel. The Culexus moves like a hole in the film of the world. Necrons falter when they look at him as if vision were a sin. The Kasserkin advance behind that absence. Short bursts, measured steps, grenades placed like commas. Celestians follow, hymns under their breath. Bolters talking, flamers writing an old language on the walls. The Knight Centura stays within arm's length of Sidious as he walks the outer hull toward the pylon. He hates the void suit. He endures it. Gravity whispers lies below. Stars watch without caring. The pylon hums and the hum feels like it knows his name. At the pylon root, a gate yawns, a dolmen mouth that leads into nowhere mapped by sane things. A geometry of Blackstone teeth lock around a core of absence. He raises his hand. Lightning wants to crawl. The torc hums no. Quietus's presence makes sure the no sticks. Begin the weave, Acastia says over vox. Gellar grain to node 1. Choir on the litany. Lord Protector, thread your storm. He threads, but not like before. No roar, no rain of death. He draws a thin skein of pressure through the seam, like wire through a ring. He sets it into the ship's Gellar harmonics. It bites and hangs there, a taut line between sanity and the scar where hyperspace and warp rub raw. The pylon vibrates as if insulted by new purpose. The insult draws company. The tomb ship vomits scarabs. They boil like mercury over the moon's dust and up his boots. The Knight Centura steps forward and the bugs die in a clean circle because there is nothing for them to eat in an absence that real. Warriors rise with green rods held level. They aim at Sidious because they are old and not stupid. He does not leap. He is not a hero in a fresco. He rotates the moon very slightly. No, he looks like he stands. In truth, he presses en masse. The warrior's aim is a law. Laws break under better laws. Beams score past. He wastes no breath. Sutekh arrives in the corridor above with a stride that ignores men. His rod sketches a line around Quietus that makes the null wobble like a soap bubble. The blade slides free with a word that is a sum. It hums at a pitch that matches Sidious's old breath in Kallista's wind. The Acastia sergeant reads what is about to happen and throws his squad sideways into cover. "Down!" he barks. The blade scythes the air where Quietus was. The null collapses for a heartbeat. The force rushes toward the vacuum and slams into Blackstone with a sound like a bell breaking. Sidious feels the cut from 10 decks away. The blade knows him. It will cut nearer next time. He finishes the first thread. The pylon shivers. A ripple goes up the lattice and across space like a rumor. Choirs steady. Vox chants hold. The Astronomican's light, thin here, grows less thin. He locks the thread. The torc hums cool and true. Node 1 stable, reports a tech priest whose flesh twitches the way a machine twitches when it wants to be better. By the Omnissiah's manifold and by forbidden elegance. Choose your words, Acastia warns without looking at him. Choosing, the priest says meekly. Sutekh lowers the rod and shifts grip on the blade. You learned, he chimes. I learned faster. Quietus steps by inches, bringing that lack of being back over the battle like a curtain. The Knight Centura takes a second step on the hull by Sidious, mirroring the assassin's move without seeing him. The two blanks make a corridor of nothing that intersects Sutekh's field. The cryptech's geometry fizzes. For a measurable moment, the blade is just a blade. Now, Sidious says, and does a small thing big. He uses his mouth. All sections, mark Bravo 3, he calls. Push, grenades arc. Flamers plant cones, Melta bites. Sutekh's chest jewel flares and fails to calculate everything at once. He flinches because even the dead can be taught to remember fear when physics insists. The blade still finds him. It kisses Sidious' ribs through plate and robe and righteous oath. The cut is not deep, it is true. He tastes metal in his mouth. He breathes, and the breath matches the blade's pitch, and he is a fool for half a second because he wants to meet that song with his old song. The torc hums like a hand on a hot stove. He lets the song pass. He chooses a trick from another life. No lightning, he pulls the floor. The metal tiles under Sutekh bulge upward like a slow wave. The cryptech rides it with machine grace until the wave meets a pillar that he cannot phase through while he holds the blade's field steady. Sidious locks the wave. The pillar and the floor argue in hard language. The argument wins by crush. Sutekh's arm jams between laws. He drops the blade. Oh, Quietus is not elegant. He puts a hand like oblivion on the cryptech's chest. Something in Sutekh goes still afield, a coordinate, a memory of a shape. The Knight Centura's presence completes the circuit. The rod's geometry falls to pieces like a broken wish. Take the blade, Acastia orders, crisp as a bell. A Celestian does with both hands and a prayer half said because she can feel it hating her. She drops it into a box that groans and locks. The box has wards. The box is ugly. Ugly things sometimes save you. Sutekh phases away through a hole that shouldn't be there. He leaves a note behind in the form of a wound in the air that tastes like the promise of his return. Node 2, Galen asks, voice level because she has learned how to keep voice level when the sky has opinions. Visible, says the tech priest. Defended. We can take it. We must, Acastia says, before their answer arrives. It arrives now. Warp shadow, not a fleet, a word. It slides through the seam he stitched and looks around with interest. The Lord of Change that lost a leg at Kallista drapes itself along the moon's horizon, like a wound that wants to be a sunrise. Its name writes itself in frost on visors. Kasser can gag behind their teeth and then swallow the taste of copper and keep their lines. Do not speak it, Canyonis Isolde says, gentle as if telling a child not to touch a stove. Speak the prayer you know. Speak any true thing, truth makes a flaw. The demon smiles with its whole face and half the sky. Servant, it croons, spinning the word like a toy. How sweet. Let me make your service cleaner. Let me cut your leash and tie you to an idea instead. Sidious feels the mimetic hook slide toward his oath. It looks like help. It smells like efficiency. It offers to lift the line the torc holds and carry it for him while keeping his hands free. Every part of him that loves control leans toward it. He refuses, and the price comes in the old currency, pain. It lives behind his eyes for 3 breaths. He uses those breaths to count for a gun crew. 1, 2, 3. They do not hear the deep. They hear him, and the shells land where a lie lives and remind it that lies burn. The Night Centura raises her hand. Behind her visor, her face is a blade. The demon's attention slides off her. It snarls. She does not move. A long tone threads through the choir, not the roar of intervention. A line that says, "Remember your fence." The ship's Gellar field shifts half a degree. The wire he threaded takes a new angle. The demon's mouth shuts as if a hand took its jaw gently and set it aside. "This is not yours," Acastia says into the open channel, "because naming is part of war. This is our seam. Leave." The demon leaves like a teacher leaving a class that might pass the exam or set the school on fire. It is amused. It is listening. They take Node 2 in a rush that is not pretty. Men die. Sisters die. Necrons die and rise and die again. The blank corridor widens. The torc sings steady. Sidious weaves a second thread and a third. The lattice changes song. It holds the seam without pulling it open. The Astronomican's whisper stops wavering. Vox clears. "Anchor formed," the priest reports, voice wet with awe. He tries to file away as error. "Stability vector up 12%. Mimetic intrusion down. Null disturbance harmonized." "In plain words," Galen says dryly. "It works," he says. "It will draw them. It already draws them." "Good," Sidious says. "Let them come to where we have fences." He stands on the dead moon, hand open, storm coiled inside the rules that he chose. His ribs ache where the blade sang. The cut on his arm has stopped weeping. The torc is warm. The blank breathes. He looks small between them and the pylon. He feels larger than he has felt in years because he is not alone inside his own will. Ports ripple. On Kallista, banners add a stitch to the cog around the Aquila. It is a small glow. No one is punished for it because the city is busy being alive. On Cadia that was, in ruins that still remember soldiers, a warband paints his sign wrong on purpose and uses it to bait a loyal regiment. The trap fails because the regiment's chaplain has seen a better fence and keeps his men behind it. On Mars, a schism that would have sent a junior tech priest to a cold post pauses. Magus Heliax Ost posts a paper in red ink. On harmonized null Gellar counter lattices. It is stamped with 10 seals and 1 warning. Do not build without a blank and a leash. On a Black Legion cruiser, Thravian opens a crate. Inside, a woman shakes under chains and sigils. Her name is Celine Mott. She was a radio officer on Kallista during the first storm. She spoke the stranger's cadence into her set for 3 hours and lived. That means she carries numbers he needs. He leans in and whispers the riddle that wants a name. She spits blood and then laughs at him. "I call him ours," she says. Thravian smiles politely and begins. In the tomb that never sleeps, Sutekh rebuilds and records. He writes a new line. Predator accepts leash. Leash is armor. Remove leash. He forges a net not of Blackstone but of absence. He will cast it over a man and the man will not know it is there because it will be the shape of what he already wears. In the warp, the mirror gathers a court of things that cannot decide if they are men or signs. They practice being a law. They want to be a weapon you enjoy obeying. They whisper a title, Optimate. It sounds clean. It smells of bleach and ash. The mandate of quiet storms rolls on. It is slower than a crusade led by a man without a torc. It saves more. On Halatus Ridge, he refuses to break a rebel city with a planet-kill strike. Galen's line officers go hard-eyed at the lost time. Acastia goes hard-voiced at the doctrine. He builds a bridge of timing across the city instead. Curfew by district, supply by clock, relief by square. He whispers nothing. He prints schedules and keeps them. The rebellion dies because hunger is met and order is simple. On Novampyra, a Tyrannid vanguard spore cloud sniffs his storm and veers like a shark. He tries to pull it away with pressure and fails because biology isn't listening. He learns that his song attracts not only those who hate song, but those who eat it. Lances and fire do what storms cannot. He writes that down. He does not overfit the world to his gift. On Lamia's gate, an Astartes strike force in cobalt and gold appears without announcement. Ultramarine, a chaplain with a voice like a marching day, meets him on a field of black glass. The Marine raises his Crozius. Sidious inclines his head. "You are useful," the chaplain says. "You are also a lesson." "In what?" Sidious asks. "In how to aim a knife without becoming the knife," the chaplain says. "Keep aiming. If you turn, we cut." He salutes and leaves without drama. It is a benediction in this language. Canoness Isolde watches that exchange and smiles a little. "Fences and wolves," she says under her breath. "Always homework." Quietus says nothing. He never says much. He sits within 3 paces when Sidious works and becomes a shadow when he rests. The Knight Centaur takes the other side. Between them a path. He walks it. At night, when there is a night, he stands on balconies that look at stars and counts. Lives saved, costs chosen, battles left. The torc hums. Sometimes it warms when he has judged well. Sometimes it bites when he considers the fast answer. He listens. Acastia writes. She does not praise in ink. She records fact. Lord Protector upheld oath under mimetic assault, one report notes. Torc resonance observed at peak during refusal. Another aligns numbers with prayers. Casualties down 30% versus predicted if conventional plan. Heresy up 2% in civilian chatter. Choirs counter with sermons on fences. Net risk acceptable. Monitor. Galen trains new admirals in cadence drills. She calls them storm tables. They are not sorcery, they are rhythm. Gunnery officers learn to breathe on a beat. Pilots learn to roll on a count. She smiles and does not call any of it faith. She calls it duty. The breach he threaded does not vanish. It settles into a living scar and a tool. He visits it in thought sometimes, as a farmer checks a fence line at dawn. He feels the mirror on the other side, hands on the same wire tugging. He holds steady. The Knight Centaur's presence keeps the tug an ache instead of a rupture. Quietus keeps it dull as a rock. He keeps it. One quiet watch. Acastia steps to the balcony where he stands, ink on her fingers, and sleep not yet in her eye. The planet below is a coin of lights and dark. "Do you regret choosing the leash?" she asks. "Sometimes," he says, because he has agreed to answer in spirit. "Then I count. The counting helps." She leans on the stone. She looks older than when they met. She also looks more alive. "You like counting," she says. "I like winning," he says. "We are still at war," she says. "We always will be," he says. "The question is, who pays and how much?" She nods. "Here are the next page," she says, and hands him a slate. The white dots on the hololith have moved. The lattice now touches a shrine world called Penance, a forge moon called Morn, and a tide of refugees in between that will clog any fleet movement if they panic. "We will not panic them," he says. "You will not speak into their heads," she says without looking at his talk. "I will not," he says. He looks at the slate and sees where words and trains and food must go. He smiles, a small, cold smile. "We will teach them a drill and we will keep it." He turns. The blank breathes. The talk hums. Canoness Isolde hums a hymn. Admiral Galen sets the first transports moving before he finishes the sentence. The fleet shifts like a school of fish becoming a shape. "Begin," he says. Far away in the eye, a demon scratches his title on the wall and plans a joke in 3 parts. In a tomb, a cryptek finishes a net woven of nothings and smiles a chimed smile. In the warp, a mirror practices kindness without cost and calls it efficiency. On the map, the Aquila and the cog turn together. The small rune between them stays sharp. The hinge holds. The door opens and closes as it should. The storm obeys. The world breathes. And the war goes on, stubborn and bright in places where no one expected light would last this long.